Again, my friends, these are not new terms. And then in the 19th century, we have the great Cardinal Newman, the great English scholar, in his debate with the Anglican Hussey, who defends the title of the Co-Redemptrix, saying, if you can accept the great patristic images of Our Lady as the Theotokos and things like the Celestial Queen and the Queen of the Apostles, how could you have a problem with Co-Redemptrix? This is our tradition. And then even in the 20th century, in a very exclusive category of saints, these are just saints, my friends, who lived and died and were canonized in the 20th century. An amazing thing in itself. These saints tell us today this is a legitimate, contemporary, powerful term. Saints like Saint Pio, Saint Edith Stein, Saint Jose Maria Escriva, saints like Saint Maximilian Kolbe, as we know, saints like Saint Leopold Mondic, who actually gave himself as a victim soul to Our Lady Co-Redemptrix for East-West unity. So if you hear that ecumenism and co-redemption are antithetical, it's an ignorance of history. It may not be malicious, but it's an ignorance of history. And so this brings us to the 20th century and 21st century magisterium. And again, I want to make the distinction and the unity between doctrine and title. The doctrine of Marian co-redemption, which simply says that Mary uniquely participated with and under Jesus in the redemption of the world, both at the Annunciation and a climax at Calvary. This has been the official papal teaching of the magisterium from Leo XIII to Pope Benedict XVI. Now let's talk about the title. When does the title appear in the papal magisterium? Well, it's interesting that under the pontificate of Saint Pius X, 3 times the title of Co-Redemptrix appears. Twice it appears in documents of the Holy Office, which is today the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith. 1 time it appears with the Congregation of Rites. But this is what's interesting. It is the Holy Office that uses Co-Redemptrix that they insert into a response from the faithful. In other words, what I'm saying here is, it's not like the Holy Office is saying, we approve the title. It's that the Holy Office volunteers the title in a response to a petition for an indulgence, for a certain prayer to be used. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the Holy Office was so confident with this title that even in responding, they initiated the title. And of course, we have Pius XI, who on 3 occasions as Pope uses the title, and even says this title is something that we, in the Italian, it's a double negative, we could not but use to express Our Lady's unique role in the redemption. And then, of course, we have John Paul II, who on 6 occasions uses the title Co-Redemptrix. And not, as some opponents might say, just in, quote, marginal texts. I've never heard of a marginal text by the Vicar of Christ myself. It seems to me if it comes from the Vicar of Christ, it ceases to be marginal. But even in context, for example, the text of Guayaquil, where it is surrounded by scriptural and conciliar theology, the title is used as this unique role. The Second Vatican Council clearly teaches the doctrine, Lumen Gentium 57, especially Lumen Gentium 58 and Lumen Gentium 61. In fact, John Paul II wrote his only Marian encyclical, Redemptoris Mater, as a commentary on the passage of co-redemption from the Second Vatican Council, Lumen Gentium 58. That's how strong it was in his heart. When people mentioned that the title was not contained in the Second Vatican Council, and that's accurate, the history of why it's not contained is because a theological subcommission took out the title, even though there's 4 paragraphs in the first schema, the first draft of the treatment of Our Lady at the Council. There's 4 paragraphs of the explanation of the history of the title and of its legitimacy. Why was it taken out by a subcommission of theologians? They said because we take out terms that absolutely true in themselves could be a difficulty for our separated brethren. And so the fathers of Vatican II never had an opportunity to even vote on accepting or rejecting co-redemptrix. It was removed before it came to them. And I would just ask in an honest way, if we use that criterion for the title, anything that could offend our separate brethren, what do we do with transubstantiation? What do we do with papal infallibility? Let alone, what do we do with Immaculate Conception and the Assumption? So, the doctrine is absolutely the official teachings of our Catholic faith, and the title has been used by 3 pontificates. Pope Benedict XVI, thanks be to God, is continuing this line of teaching. Now, on February 11th of this year, on the World Day of the Sick, on his letter for the World Day of the Sick, our Holy Father specifically talked about Mary's unique sharing in the passion of her Son at Calvary as a continuity of her yes to the Annunciation. It's also significant that on that day, in St. Peter's Basilica, in Rome, Cardinal Lozano Barragin, the prefect for pastoral care, who presided at the Mass of the World Day of the Sick in St. Peter's, gave his homily on Our Lady in Mary and Co-Redemption, and specifically called her, right now, in this year, the co-redemptrix, with the Savior. The next day, his use of co-redemptrix was distributed throughout the world on Vatican Information Service. So if you hear that co-redemptrix is simply a pre-Vatican term, please be assured it is not only post-conciliar because of John Paul II, but it's post-conciliar because of the magisterium and the expression of it in our own time. 1 week ago today, Pope Benedict wrote a letter for the World Day of Prayer in China, which of course he set last year for May 24th. And in this letter to Our Lady of Shashan, he says the following, and I want to read this to you because it's significant in that there was no reason by way of theme that the Pope would have to bring up co-redemption. This is what our Holy Father said 1 week ago today in his prayer. He says, Virgin Mother, when you obediently said yes in the house of Nazareth, you allowed God's eternal Son to take flesh in your virginal womb and thus to begin in history the work of our redemption. You willingly and generously cooperated in that work, allowing the sword of pain to pierce your soul until the supreme hour of the cross, when you kept watch on Calvary, standing beside your Son, who died that we might live. From that moment you became, in a new way, the mother of all those who receive your Son Jesus in faith and choose to follow in his footsteps by taking up his cross. Mother of hope, in the darkness of Holy Saturday you journeyed with unfailing trust towards the dawn of Easter. Grant that your children may discern at all times, even those that are darkest, the signs of God's loving presence. That's our Holy Father 1 week ago. Co-redemption is on his mind and in his heart.